A man walks into a funeral parlor where a wake is being held. He closes his eyes and calls out the deceased's name 3 times. Suddenly Mrs. Lee Hae-sook's soul is summoned. She floats in the air, weightless, until she is given a special bracelet that allows her to stand firmly on the ground. The man is a reaper, a guide for the recently departed, responsible for escorting souls to their final destination. Be it heaven or hell, he presents Mrs. Lee with a variety of transportation options. She considers them carefully, even jokingly asking, "Is this a modern taxi? I've never been in one before." Finally she chooses the subway. The reaper pulls out a phone, seemingly from the underworld, and checks the schedule. The next train is arriving in 3 minutes. Mrs. Lee steps outside the funeral parlor and waits. As the ghostly train pulls up, she boards, beginning her journey across the river, which divides the living world from the afterlife. Inside the train the atmosphere is thick with fear. Each soul prays silently, hoping to ascend to heaven and not be cast into hell. The train eventually reaches a stop shrouded in inky blackness. The gates of hell. The doors open and something strange happens. An unseen force holds Mrs. Lee firmly in her seat while a young man across from her is violently pulled into the darkness. He's not alone. One by one souls burdened by the sins of their past lives are yanked from the train and plunged into the abyss. After the doors close, the scenery outside transforms. Blue skies, fluffy white clouds, singing birds, blooming flowers, and radiant light fill the view. Miraculously all the remaining souls including Mrs. Lee have arrived in heaven. Mrs. Lee is bewildered. She always assumed she was destined for hell. Her life after all was far from spotless. Just days before, at the age of 80, Mrs. Lee was a formidable loan shark. A veritable money vacuum in her impoverished neighborhood. Nearly every shop owner owed her money. Every day she and her assistant Jung-eun made their rounds collecting debts. Those who tried to avoid payment were met with Mrs. Lee's stern face, rubber gloves, and a gleaming knife. A sight that drained the blood from their faces and forced them to empty their pockets. Yet after intimidating her debtors, Mrs. Lee calmly walked into their homes and made kimchi, explaining that her husband Jun couldn't stand the smell. On her way home she was often cursed and pelted with trash by her neighbors. But with years of experience she had developed a knack for dodging, predicting their attacks with uncanny accuracy and reminding Jung-eun to open her umbrella for protection. In the eyes of the community she was a cruel, cold-hearted, and unfeeling old woman who worshipped money. But only Jung-eun knew the truth behind Mrs. Lee's tough exterior. Beneath the hardened shell was a soft and compassionate heart. Years ago, when Mrs. Lee went to Jung-eun's home to collect a debt from her parents, she witnessed the young girl being abused. Unable to turn away, Mrs. Lee offered to take Jung-eun as payment for the debt. She raised Jung-eun as her daughter. And the reason Mrs. Lee was so relentless in collecting debts was that she was supporting her entire family, including her husband who had been paralyzed since the age of 30. She understood that only through unwavering toughness could she and her loved ones survive in a harsh world. In her younger years, Mrs. Lee often helped those struggling financially, even waiving interest when she saw their genuine hardship. But Mrs. Lee realized something unsettling. When people needed money, she was their savior. Yet when it came time to collect, even without adding a single penny in interest, she became the villain in their eyes. From that point on, Mrs. Lee became less willing to freely offer her kindness. At the end of each tiring day of debt collection, Mrs. Lee and Jung-eun would meticulously rinse their mouths and spray themselves with alcohol at the front door, fearful of bringing the bad luck associated with their work into their home to her husband. The moment she stepped inside, Mrs. Lee transformed back into the devoted wife who had cared tenderly for her husband for so many years. Even at 80, they could still talk endlessly, expressing their love for each other sincerely and without reservation. The next day, Mrs. Lee and Jung-eun continued their rounds. This time they arrived at a debtor's house just as a funeral was taking place. Jung-eun hesitated, but Mrs. Lee believed that everyone carries their burdens and hers were no less heavy. Since the age of 30 she had grown accustomed to being cursed and shunned. Deep down Mrs. Lee believed she was the most pitiable one. She approached the deceased's daughter hoping to recover the outstanding debt. The daughter, enraged, shoved funeral money into Mrs. Lee's hands, viewing it as an insult. Not wanting to inflict further pain, Mrs. Lee took a portion of the money and placed the rest back in the envelope as a gesture of condolence. But the daughter, misunderstanding her intentions, accused her of being fake, and cursed her, saying she was surely destined for hell. That night Mrs. Lee had a nightmare. She dreamt of demons dragging her down into a bottomless hell. Terrified, she took her blanket and slept on the floor beside her husband Jun. He held her hand and comforted her, knowing he had burdened his wife throughout their life together. He both yearned to stay with her a little longer and hoped for a swift departure so she could live her remaining years unburdened. The following morning Mrs. Lee bought a beautiful bouquet. June admired them, saying, "Your back looks just like that bouquet." Beautiful and radiant, Mrs. Lee chuckled, sat down and asked, "When am I the most beautiful?" June didn't hesitate. "You're always beautiful, but you're most beautiful right now." Mrs. Lee's eyes welled up. She understood the underlying message in his words. A gentle, resigned farewell from a man who knew he was about to leave this world. Later that day Mrs. Lee went to church and prayed for her husband, asking God to grant June a good man without a single blemish on his soul passage to heaven. As for herself, a woman with a tarnished reputation, she dared not ask for anything more. When she returned home, June had passed away peacefully in his sleep, never to wake again. A chilling rain seemed to fall upon the soul of the once indomitable woman. Mrs. Lee's steely resolve crumbled. She sat for hours refusing medication, uttering not a word, consumed by grief and remembrance. Determined to secure a stable future for her adopted daughter Jung-eun, she forced herself to stand and resume her work collecting debts. Seeing Jung-eun's budding affection for the son of the rice cake shop owner, Mrs. Lee took her shopping for new clothes, orchestrated a date, and even forgave the remaining debt in exchange for Jung-eun's chance at love. But when she learned the truth, Jung-eun, furious, trashed the shop and demanded full repayment of the debt. Mrs. Lee quickly pulled her away, disappointed that her final attempt at matchmaking had backfired. Jung-eun finally realized Mrs. Lee was trying to give everything away before her departure. She burst into tears. Unable to accept the inevitable, Mrs. Lee, eyes glistening with tears, said, "Old people die and I'm tired. I just want you to live well and protect yourself so I can live in peace." From that day on, Jung-eun actively learned how to open an umbrella against life's unexpected blows. Learning in essence how to face the world, Mrs. Lee imparted all her wisdom, from managing debts to reading people's hearts. Then, like a leaf falling at the end of autumn, she gently passed away. She had always believed that with a life filled with resentment and curses directed at her, she was destined for hell. But she arrived in heaven. Standing in line at the pearly gates, Mrs. Lee listened as the security officer announced, "All souls, please leave behind the most important thing in your life for the next part of your journey. Travel light." A mother clutched a wad of cash, her life savings meant for the child she had abandoned. A firefighter clung to his oxygen mask, unable to forgive himself for failing to save a little girl trapped in a fire. Only when the little girl appeared taking his hand and they walked through the gates together did he break down in tears. The hope for redemption in the afterlife couldn't erase the pain of the earthly realm. Mrs. Lee, however, carried nothing. Everything she cherished had already made its way to heaven. Her beloved June. Before settling into eternity, Mrs. Lee had to answer two questions from heaven's gatekeeper. The first: who do you wish to live with, if that person does not choose you? You cannot be together. Without hesitation she chose June, and fortunately June had chosen her too. The second question: at what age do you wish to live in heaven? Once chosen, it cannot be changed. She thought back to the age of 25 when she first met him, but then she remembered June's words, "You're most beautiful right now," so she chose 80. She chose herself at the age June loved most, embracing the wrinkles, the gray hair and the marks of time. She chose her present self because it was the one that touched her beloved's heart the deepest. After completing the check-in process, Mrs. Lee was given a choice of transportation to reach her waiting husband. Unable to wait a moment longer, she chose the fastest option. Magic. In a blink she emerged from a fruit box, heart pounding like a love-struck teenager on her way to a first date. The attendant told her, "Follow the call of your heart and you will find him." And so she followed the path that made her heart race. She walked until she saw a charming house, the very house June had described. "If there's a place called heaven, that's where I want to live with you." The gate bloomed with trumpet vines and the nameplate clearly read, Hae-sook and June. Every detail was a testament to June's long-awaited preparation for their reunion. Mrs. Lee's hand trembled as she rang the doorbell. A man emerged. It was June. But in that instant the smile faded from Mrs. Lee's lips. June, the man who had loved her his entire life, appeared before her with the youthful vigor of his 30-year-old self. Mrs. Lee, however, remained the 80-year-old wife with silver hair and a slow gait. Before Mrs. Lee could speak or comprehend the situation, June, after a moment of stunned surprise, fixed her with a tender gaze. He quickly led her to a park, his newfound vitality bubbling over. He ran, jumped, and tumbled like a child. In the past, paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair, he had confided, "If I could ever walk again, the first thing I'd do is run until I collapsed." Today that wish had come true. June excitedly showed off their new home and even presented matching backpacks and hiking boots, eager to explore eternity together. but Mrs. Lee, in her aged and weary body, could only stare at her reflection, the silver hair, the frail hands, the slow shuffling gait. Her husband, in stark contrast, was youthful and energetic. Their shared dream of heaven was becoming Mrs. Lee's personal hell. Later she wandered outside, encountering young men and women brimming with life. Looking down at her wrinkled hands, she wept silently amidst the lush green grass. In this place where everyone was granted their desired youth, she alone had chosen to retain her old age. Trusting her husband's words, "You're most beautiful right now." But were those words truly genuine? In her melancholy, Mrs. Lee noticed a young woman with pigtails staring intently at her. A look of defiance and pride in her eyes. It felt like a warning. Mrs. Lee blinked and the girl vanished. Was she someone June had once loved? Returning home, she felt even more out of place. June was cheerfully preparing their bed. But how could Mrs. Lee in her elderly body share a bed with such a young man? She decided to sleep separately as they had when he was alive. June, sensing her distress, asked what was wrong. Unwilling to upset him, Mrs. Lee hid the true reason that his own words had led her to choose old age. She lied, saying, "I simply wrote down the wrong age." But June, in his concern, blurted out the painful truth. "Everyone here gets to be young again. Only you're an old wrinkled woman." Realizing his blunder, he quickly tried to mend the situation. "No matter how old you are, you'll always be my wife, my Mrs. Lee." But those words weren't enough to soothe Mrs. Lee's aching heart. She tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep. The next morning June took her to his new workplace, the Heavenly Residence Support Center. Everything along the way was new and fascinating to Mrs. Lee. She looked around curiously, but also felt a pain of isolation, catching curious, even judgmental stares from passers-by. In this world she was the only old person. June went to work and Mrs. Lee was invited to a newcomer's orientation in the adjacent hall. There, she struck up a conversation with a little girl sitting in front of her, assuming the woman next to her was the child's mother. To her surprise, the little girl was actually the woman's grandmother. The woman's story deeply touched Mrs. Lee. She had been ostracized by her husband's family when she fell seriously ill. Only her mother-in-law, now the little girl, had stayed by her side, caring for her every need. Before passing away, the woman had wished, "If there's a next life, I want to be the mother so I can take care of my mother-in-law the way she cared for me." And here in heaven her wish had been granted. After hearing the story, Mrs. Lee sighed. Perhaps everyone carried an unfulfilled wish, a yearning. Mrs. Lee had held on to the image of herself that June loved most. June had simply longed for a healthy body to live life to the fullest. Both had their wishes granted, yet fate, in its playful cruelty, had made their happiness incomplete. The orientation leader began to explain the rules of heaven. Residents were free to choose their hobbies and join any group they liked. However, foul language and disrespectful behavior were strictly prohibited, punishable by banishment to hell. Simple rules, but a reminder that even heavenly bliss came with responsibilities. As the meeting ended, Mrs. Lee saw the pigtailed girl again. Mrs. Lee began to wonder if this girl held a grudge from their past lives. But as she searched her memories, no recollection of the girl surfaced. Then, just as quickly as she had appeared, the girl vanished, leaving a growing unease in Mrs. Lee's heart. The feeling only subsided when she rejoined June. She started to wave to him, but seeing her wrinkled hands she hesitated, suddenly self-conscious. She was about to turn and leave quietly when June called out, "Honey." He took Mrs. Lee's hand and led her to the heavenly restaurant. There no money was needed. They simply scanned the backs of their hands to use the merit points accumulated during their earthly lives. Mrs. Lee, assuming her bad deeds would leave her with no points, was overjoyed when the payment went through. She beamed like a child receiving a precious gift. Seeing her smile, June's heart melted. "You're still as adorable as ever," he said. Hand in hand, they strolled under the setting sun. June confided, "All those years bedridden, I only dreamed of taking walks like this with you." From youth to old age, that wish remained unfulfilled until now. Tears welled up in Mrs. Lee's eyes. "My greatest joy each day was coming home from the market and seeing you waiting for me," she confessed. That night, as Mrs. Lee slept, a distant cry woke her with a start. Unbeknownst to her, it was young A. She hadn't yet come to terms with Mrs. Lee's death. To her, Mrs. Lee had been the only light in a dark childhood. She had witnessed Mrs. Lee's struggles, protecting both her and June from life's storms. Disturbed by the crying, Mrs. Lee went to June's room, spread a blanket on the floor, and lay down beside him. She silently held his hand just as she had in life, and drifted back to sleep, her heart heavy with longing. June smiled softly, offering silent comfort. The next day, Mrs. Lee attended another newcomers gathering. Everyone was encouraged to find clubs and activities that suited their interests. She spotted a group of elderly people and hurried over, hoping to find some company, but something about the group seemed odd. One old man kept bragging incessantly while a young man persistently tried to place a ball in his hand. Growing irritated, Mrs. Lee asked a seemingly normal elderly woman what was going on. "They're waiting for their owners to pick them up," the woman replied. Before Mrs. Lee could process this, a group of young people rushed in. Suddenly, the elderly folks around her transformed into dogs. Excitedly bounding towards their owners, it turned out they were all dogs who had owners in their earthly lives. They had ascended to heaven and were eagerly awaiting reunion with their beloved humans. 3 dogs remained unclaimed. They had been strays scavenging for food near dumpsters before being taken to a shelter. No one adopted them, and when their time was up, they were euthanized and sent to heaven. Despite having no owners, they still hoped someone would love them, take them for walks, and hold them close. Mrs. Lee was speechless. Back inside the center, Hae-sook saw the pigtailed girl again. She accidentally knocked over a water bottle, a familiar gesture that sparked a feeling of recognition in Mrs. Lee. She called out, "Sonia." The girl turned, a pout on her face. "It took you long enough to recognize me." Sonia was the cat Mrs. Lee had once owned, now transformed into a youthful, elegant, and slightly haughty young woman, mirroring her feline personality, while overjoyed to recognize a familiar face. Mrs. Lee was taken aback when Sonia asked, "Why are you still so old?" Mrs. Lee didn't know how to answer. Both June and Sonia had chosen youthful versions of themselves. Yet she remained 80, overcome with emotion. She tearfully confronted June. "It's because you said I was most beautiful at 80. That's why I chose to stay 80. June was stunned into silence, hoping to ease her burden. He took her to the age adjustment center, but the clerk informed them that once an age was chosen upon entering heaven, it could not be changed. Tears streaming down her face, Mrs. Lee asked, "Then, can June be changed back to 80? June, though he hadn't yet fully enjoyed his regained youth, agreed without hesitation. "As long as I'm with you, I'm willing to be an old man again." But it was Mrs. Lee who ultimately backed down. She chose to keep them both as they were, an old woman and a young man, because true love wasn't about being the same, but about sharing the same heart. On their way home, June unexpectedly apologized, "Whether in life or here, I've always been selfish, thinking only of myself." He then revealed a secret he'd kept hidden. He knew about Mrs. Lee's past as a loan shark, the lengths she went to provide for their family, and the humiliation and curses she endured. He'd learned about it by chance from his massage therapist, who described a thin, battered woman who remained incredibly resilient, powerless to help. At the time, he had only asked the therapist to make sure she carried an umbrella when it rained. In that moment, Hae-sook burst into tears. All the fatigue, the years of shouldering burdens, the public scorn melted away. Knowing her beloved understood and cherished her, they embraced tightly, no longer an old woman and a young man, but 2 souls intertwined. And in that moment, Mrs. Lee knew this was truly heaven. Back home, June was brimming with excitement. "I have a surprise for you," he announced. Before them was a wall, adorned with flowers and LED lights, spelling out a heartfelt message. June had meticulously prepared, but in the next instant, a strange woman appeared, rushing forward to embrace him. A buzzing sound filled Mrs. Lee's head. June's rational facade crumbled. Hae-sook snapped. She lunged forward, grabbing June's hair with one hand and the strange woman's with the other. Rewind 30 minutes before the young woman rushed in to embrace June. In heaven, time stood still and suffering seemed to vanish. But loneliness remained. The final stage of the newcomers' welcome process was the memory room, where residents revisited their lives. Some laughed, some cried. When it was Hae-sook's turn, she put on the memory glasses and the film of her life began to play. From a young age, Mrs. Lee had been without her mother. Her grandmother had lied, saying her mother had gone mad, fallen into a lake and drowned. Haunted by this loss, young Hae-sook had often visited the lake, searching for her mother, drawn by the rumored sound of crying. Convinced it was her mother's voice, but she always found nothing. Hae-sook grew up under her grandmother's strict control. Forced to wear ill-fitting hand-me-down shoes, she was pressured to marry a wealthy old man, believing that marrying rich was her only escape from hardship. Then on the way to meet her prospective husband, she saw a young man named June. He was like a beacon of light in her dreary existence. Love at first sight, he chased after her car, crashed the meeting, and in front of everyone, extended his hand, promising to take her to a new world. Hae-sook chose June. choosing love and dreams over the shackles of an arranged marriage. But fate had other plans. Their happiness was short-lived. Not long after their wedding, June was in an accident that left him paralyzed. From then on, Hae-sook carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, caring for her husband and working tirelessly to make ends meet. She took on difficult jobs, even resorting to loan sharking to keep their family afloat. When the memory playback ended, Hae-sook sobbed uncontrollably. She couldn't understand why happiness was always so fleeting. Pain and hardship had been her constant companions. The attendant, with a gentle smile, offered to take her to the healing room, a special place in heaven reserved for wounded hearts. It was a place to mend emotional wounds, let go of the past, and truly begin a happy afterlife. After her session, Hae-sook felt a sense of relief. June came to take her home, extending his hand just as he had when they first met, his eyes still holding the same warmth and tenderness. In that moment, Hae-sook realized his love for her remained unchanged. Perhaps, she thought, the age difference wasn't such a big deal after all. But just as her heart began to mend, a young woman rushed in and embraced June. Shocked and enraged, Hae-sook lost her composure, grabbing both of them by the hair and demanding an explanation. June stammered out an explanation. When he first arrived in heaven, his job was to escort souls on the train between heaven and hell. He wasn't allowed to interfere with their destinies. But during one trip, he saw this young woman about to be taken to hell. Drawn to her, he couldn't bear it. He rushed forward, embraced her, and pulled her onto the heaven-bound train. Hae-sook was a mixture of anger and sadness. How could she bear the thought of her husband having feelings for another woman, especially now that she was old and the other woman was young and beautiful? She demanded that the woman find her own family, but the woman had amnesia. She didn't remember her name, where she came from, or anyone she belonged to. Seeing her distress, June begged Hae-sook to let her stay just one night. Reluctantly, she agreed. That night, sleep evaded Hae-sook. She tossed and turned, consumed by jealousy and a whirlwind of emotions. Early the next morning, seeking solace and activity, she began cleaning the house. While sweeping the yard, she noticed small purple shimmering fragments scattered everywhere. Upon closer inspection, she realized they were shards of memories. Memories of her violently confronting June and the young woman. June explained that these purple shards were called grapes. In heaven, whenever someone did something bad, a grape would fall. Each house had a grape trellis at the entrance. If the trellis was filled with grapes, the resident would be banished to hell. Currently, Hae-sook was only 2 grapes away from a one-way ticket to hell. Due to the alarming number of grapes she'd accumulated, she was forced to attend remedial classes, which involved going to church for confession and prayer. While Hae-sook was off atoning for her sins, June took the young woman to the Heavenly Administration Center to investigate her background and search for her relatives. However, the registrar revealed a disturbing secret. No one arrived in heaven with amnesia except in one extremely rare case. A soul wrongly condemned to hell who had escaped and infiltrated heaven. The forced crossing caused memory loss. If discovered, the punishment would be far worse than hell itself. Meanwhile, the young woman was approached by the 3 stray dogs, still in human form because they remained unclaimed. They relied on their canine instincts, convinced the young woman was in fact a dog, not a human. They tried to recruit her to join their cause. Finding the escapee, returning to hell, and taking revenge on those who abused animals, June brought the young woman back home, but he couldn't find any information about her identity, meaning there was no way to send her away. Flustered, he avoided Hae-sook's gaze. Just then, the woman cheerfully announced that June had given her a new name, Sum-a, meaning cotton, because he said she was as pure and white as cotton. Hae-sook couldn't take it anymore. This beautiful young woman was constantly between her and her husband, and each display of affection was a stab to her heart. A heated argument erupted. June accused Hae-sook of being constantly angry and sullen since arriving in heaven, creating an unbearable tension between them. After the explosive fight, Hae-sook decided to leave, seeking refuge with her mother, the only place she still felt safe. With the help of the center's director, she boarded a peculiar bus bound for South Korea, 1950. The bus traversed a time tunnel, the scenery changing in a blink, transporting Hae-sook back to her past. The bus finally reached its destination at nightfall. To reach her mother's village, Hae-sook still had to cross a mountain. Watching through a monitor, the director saw Hae-sook struggling in the dark and remotely activated a giant illuminating moon to light her path. Upon arriving, Hae-sook saw a beautiful young woman emerge from a dilapidated house. Without hesitation, the woman recognized Hae-sook. Despite her now wrinkled and aged appearance in her mother's eyes, Hae-sook would always be her little girl. Overcome with emotion, Hae-sook embraced her mother. Sobbing uncontrollably, her mother cooked her a simple meal. And Hae-sook ate between sobs, finally finding solace after a lifetime of hardship. That night, nestled in her mother's arms like a wounded child, Hae-sook tearfully recounted her woes, complaining about Jun not taking her side. To help Hae-sook find forgiveness, her mother shared her bitter past. Before we continue, please help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers by taking a few seconds to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Next. After their marriage, Hae-sook's father had brought home another woman. Her mother had been forced to care for both her husband and his mistress, eventually becoming a nanny to their child. Yet, miraculously, Hae-sook's mother developed a deep affection for the innocent child. The child's pure heart brought a beautiful, gentle love she had never known. Watching her husband's mistress clumsily care for the child, she felt a pain of pity for the woman who had never experienced such a precious connection. Then one day, while her husband and his mistress were on a trip together, a train accident claimed both their lives. Hae-sook's mother took in the orphan child, raising her as her own. Hearing this, Hae-sook realized with a jolt that the child was her. Her mother gently stroked her tear-stained face, recounting the inner turmoil she had experienced. The love for the child warring with the resentment and desire to escape the painful memories associated with the house. Torn and heartbroken, she had left Hae-sook, but her heart never stopped aching for her. She had learned that the bonds of fate were stronger than blood. Hae-sook embraced her mother, sobbing, consumed by guilt for burdening her mother's life with her existence. Waking after a night of tears, Hae-sook gently caressed her mother's peaceful face. Understanding the hardships she had endured, stepping outside, she found Jun waiting for her. The director had reminded him, "Don't forget why you took this job in heaven." All this time, Jun had tirelessly traveled between Earth and heaven, bringing back postcards and watching over Hae-sook. Wanting only her happiness, now reunited, he was heartbroken to realize he had caused her so much pain. Determined to mend their relationship, he sought her out. Unwilling to let their love slip away again, Hae-sook held a letter her mother had kept for years. A wedding congratulatory letter for her and Jun. Overcome with emotion, Hae-sook repeated her mother's words, "In this world, fate is stronger than blood." Jun took her hand and smiled brightly. They walked the path home, their hearts finally reconnected, but upon opening the door, they found Sung-ae waiting. A wave of unease washed over Hae-sook. She began to suspect Sung-ae was a secret lover from Jun's past. Despite his insistence that he had only ever loved Hae-sook and had never met Sung-ae before heaven. Realizing she was being held captive by her past insecurities, Hae-sook tried to change her attitude towards Sung-ae. She believed that meeting someone was a matter of fate, seeing Sung-ae eating only plain porridge. Hae-sook quietly took out side dishes from the refrigerator, gently setting them on the table, telling her she didn't need to be shy or withdrawn. The next morning, Sung-ae woke up to find Sonya at the door, looking at her with a strange familiarity, as if they had known each other before. Sung-ae began questioning Sonya about her true identity, hoping to unlock her lost memories and understand the recurring nightmares that plagued her. In her dreams, she was relentlessly pursued by a terrifying shadowy figure with a gaping bloody mouth. Every night, she woke up in terror, the feeling of buried memories clawing at her subconscious. Just as Sonya was about to answer, a butterfly flitted past, catching her attention. With childlike wonder, she chased after it. Sung-ae followed suit, their playful interaction surprising Hae-sook and Jun, who watched from a distance. Sonya was usually aloof, yet she seemed strangely drawn to Sung-ae. Meanwhile, Hae-sook continued attending church services. However, her restless nature prevented her from sitting still. She even persuaded the priest to join her in making instant ramen. As the priest savored the steaming noodles she had prepared, he burst into tears, as if reconnecting with long-forgotten emotions. On her way home, Hae-sook found Sung-ae waiting for her, holding an umbrella. "It's going to rain," she said. But the sky was clear without a single cloud. Hae-sook felt a flicker of unease, but took Sung-ae's hand and led her home to prepare dinner. Just then, a stray badminton birdie flew towards them. With surprising agility, Sung-ae opened the umbrella, effortlessly deflecting the projectile. Hae-sook froze. She had only taught that skill to Jung-ae, the girl she loved like her daughter. Could Sung-ae be Jung-ae? The thought took root. She immediately asked Jun to send a letter to the human world, hoping to find news of Jung-ae. Jun was skeptical. Someone as strong as Jung-ae is surely thriving down there, he reasoned. But Hae-sook couldn't shake the growing anxiety in her heart. That night, she drifted off to sleep, her mind in turmoil. The next morning, she woke up to find Sam-ae asleep beside her, her small hand tucked inside her pocket like a child seeking comfort. Sam-ae had another nightmare, and in her panic, had brought her pillow to Hae-sook's room, embracing her from behind, instinctively seeking refuge in her pocket. It was a familiar gesture, a childhood habit of Jung-ae's, a way to feel safe. Hae-sook's suspicion deepened the following morning. As Hae-sook prepared for church, she saw Sam-ae sitting alone and decided to take her along, but as soon as they left, the 3 stray dogs appeared. Their presence wasn't coincidental. They represented the community of stray dogs in heaven, souls who had suffered pain, abandonment, and abuse in the human world. One had been hit by a car, another beaten to death, and another thrown from a high-rise during a domestic dispute. Humans committed countless atrocities against animals, yet earthly laws only offered paltry punishments, treating them as mere property damage. These dogs had hoped that after death, their abusers would face retribution in heaven, but they discovered there was no specific hell for animal abusers. Frustrated and enraged, the dog leader rallied the canine souls to create their hell and punish the wicked humans. Meanwhile, the heavenly administrator was quietly observing their every move. To soothe their resentment, he led them to the Dream Center, a place where they could see the lives of their former owners after their pets had passed away. Dreams unfolded before the dogs. A woman clutched a sweater covered in cat hair, sobbing uncontrollably. A man stared sadly at paw prints on a glass door. At night, in their dreams, the owners and their beloved pets reunited. Embraces, tears, apologies, and expressions of love and longing flowed freely. One small dog even led its owner to a dumpster, revealing an abandoned puppy. In a cardboard box, a small gift, a message of hope. Don't grieve, continue to love. Despite witnessing these touching moments, the dog leader remained distrustful of humans. He believed their remorse was fleeting and continued recruiting more canine and feline allies for his plan to punish humankind. Suddenly, they caught an unusual scent, following the trail. They found Sam-ae, convinced she was a lost dog, one of their own. They tried to recruit her, but she vehemently denied being a dog and refused to join their vengeful crusade. To sway Sam-ae, the 3 dogs decided to try a different tactic. They appeared before Jun in their adorable dog forms, dancing and begging him to adopt them. Though touched by their cuteness, Jun declined, explaining that Hae-sook was allergic to dogs. Meanwhile, Hae-sook quietly went to the Heavenly Administration Center to inquire about Jung-ae's status. The clerk informed her that if Jung-ae were still alive, the system wouldn't display any information. But when she entered the name, a result appeared, confirming Jung-ae's death. The address listed wasn't heaven, but a possible location in hell. This further solidified Hae-sook's belief that Sam-ae was Jung-ae, rescued from hell by Jun. Tears streaming down her face, Hae-sook embraced Sam-ae and they returned home hand in hand. That evening, a news report announced that the support center was searching for souls who had escaped from hell, urging anyone with information to come forward. Jun too began to suspect Sam-ae's true identity. He pulled her aside and asked seriously, "Do you remember anything yet?" If you're not Jung-ae, Sam-ae still couldn't recall anything, but looking at Hae-sook's loving face, she decided, if in Hae-sook's heart I am Jung-ae, then I am Jung-ae, a promise of acceptance, love, and trust. The next day, Hae-sook returned to church for her class. There she met a new classmate, Seo-jin. In his earthly life, he had driven a truck to support his wife, who suffered from Alzheimer's. He had taken her everywhere, wanting to cherish their remaining time together, but tragedy struck. Seo-jin had been diagnosed with terminal colon cancer. Distraught at the thought of his wife being alone and unable to care for herself after he was gone, he took her out for a lavish meal, had their photos taken for their memorial portraits, and meticulously planned a joint funeral. He hoped they would be reunited in heaven. But so far he hadn't found her. As Hae-sook listened, deeply moved by his story, a commotion erupted outside. The heavenly administrator and his staff had arrived, having discovered Seo-jin's true identity. An escapee from hell, panicked and cornered, he grabbed Hae-sook, holding her hostage and demanded information about his wife. However, heavenly law forbade disclosing personal information about residents. The administrator challenged him, "Did you ever ask your wife if she wanted to die with you?" Seo-jin roared in anguish, "Even if I could do it all over again, I would make the same choice. If I left her to live alone, she would be abandoned by society and die in misery." But the administrator sternly replied, "Death is a natural part of life. Everyone has the right to choose their path. You must go to hell and atone for your sins. After paying your penance, you'll have a chance to ascend to heaven." If you continue to resist, you will be completely obliterated. As the standoff intensified, June suddenly appeared, holding a red circular scarf knitted by Cheol-jin's wife before her Alzheimer's progressed. A surprise gift for her beloved husband. June presented the scarf to Cheol-jin, hoping he would feel his wife's enduring love and deep longing. While rescuing Hae-sook, June whispered in Cheol-jin's ear, "If you go to hell and complete your atonement, you'll have a chance to reunite with your wife in heaven." These words pierced his heart. He released Hae-sook, clutched the precious red scarf, and willingly surrendered, ready to face his punishment, fueled by the unwavering belief that his wife was waiting for him. With the crisis averted, Hae-sook and June returned home, only to find Sam-ae hiding in the closet, her eyes filled with terror. Seeing her fear, Hae-sook embraced her tightly, gently stroking her hair and calling her by the name etched in her heart, Jung-ae. At the same time, on the path to hell, the real Jung-ae, as if sensing Hae-sook's desperate call, turned amidst the throngs of souls searching. The story opens with a chilling depiction of the punishment inflicted upon internet trolls, those who spewed vitriol online. In the afterlife, they are condemned to hell, where they are relentlessly beaten over the head with keyboards, a fitting punishment for their sins. Meanwhile, back in heaven, Hae-sook and June, strolling home hand in hand, discover the grape count on their trellis has risen to 5, just one more, and Hae-sook will be banished to hell for gossiping about the priest. Nak-joon, frantic, begs her to stay home and avoid further trouble. She promises to go only to church for her class and then return directly. Back in class, Hae-sook learns that the new priest had died at the age of 5 and still resented his parents for abandoning him. She prepares a bowl of the flour cake he used to eat when he was alive, gently strokes his head and says, "Maybe he just got lost. Your parents probably searched for you their entire lives." The priest angrily retorts, "If my parents aren't in heaven, they're definitely in hell." He tells Hae-sook, "If you ever go down there, tell them I don't want to see them." On her way home, Hae-sook finds Sam-ae parched with thirst. She scans her blessed bracelet at a vending machine, but her account is empty, no merit points left. Frustrated, she kicks the machine, but instead of a drink, a 6th grape falls from the sky, the final one. Sealing her fate, the sky darkens ominously, a warning siren blares. The hellbound train arrives, sucking her in within seconds. Nak-joon rushes to stop it, but it's too late, refusing to give up. Nak-joon pleads with the heavenly director for a way to save his wife. Even if it means going to hell, he wants to be with her. At this point, the leader of the stray dogs, who once longed to witness the punishment of the wicked, decides to join Nak-joon's descent into hell. Meanwhile, Hae-sook arrives at the gates of hell, a bleak, chaotic realm of screams and shadows. A stark contrast to heaven's serenity. People fight, argue, and wallow in the darkness of their sins. Only when the king of hell appears does silence fall. He warns, in the human world, the powerful can escape justice, but here, no one can hide their sins. A man in a Hawaiian shirt protests, "I already served time in prison. I paid my dues. Why am I here?" Without a word, the king of hell orders him gagged and punches him, ripping his mouth open in a bloody mess. Everyone, including Hae-sook, screams in terror. No one dares to challenge him again. One by one, they line up for the sin scanner. A quick scan reveals all their earthly transgressions, assigning them to the appropriate level of hell. When it's Hae-sook's turn, the machine displays unclassified. She's taken to a separate room, where, to her surprise, she finds Jung-ae, but strangely, Jung-ae is no longer in Sam-ae's form, but has returned to her original appearance. Confused, Hae-sook wonders why only she was taken by the hell train while Sam-ae remained in heaven. She asks Jung-ae why she's here, but the girl trembles in fear, unable to remember anything, only that the environment fills her with terror. The king of hell interrupts, explaining to the group of 4. The unclassified zone holds 2 types of souls, those who haven't actually died, but are experiencing a near-death experience, and those who have died, but whose judgment, heaven or hell, is still pending. Those who are near death would return to the living world with a message. Hell is not a place you want to go. Live a virtuous life. Those whose judgment was pending would receive their final verdict after the experience. The group was then led to the surveillance room where they witnessed every bad deed they had ever committed. No matter how well hidden, everything was laid bare. Next, the king of hell took them on a tour of the burning hell reserved for murderers. Hae-sook watched in horror as screaming souls plunged into rivers of lava. Enduring unimaginable agony, an elderly couple pleaded their case, claiming they had atoned for their sins, lived virtuously, and attended church, but the hellish attendants produced evidence. An X-ray revealing the countless fractures their adopted daughter had suffered before her death, injuries inflicted by them. They were immediately subjected to the same agonizing pain their daughter had endured before being cast into the lava. Their screams echoed throughout hell. As the gruesome spectacle ended, a younger couple rushed in, weeping and begging to see their daughter. "Where is our daughter?" they cried. The attendants replied, "She's living happily in heaven." The father pleaded through tears, "Please reunite our family. We didn't kill anyone, we just made terrible choices because life was so hard." The attendants played a recording of the child's voice before her death. Her words silenced everyone. "I want to live. I have so much I want to do." The couple was cast into the burning hell for their selfish act disguised as love. For choosing to end their child's life, the king of hell declared, "Children are not their parents' possessions. They are not property. They come into this world through their parents, but they are independent beings." A harsh slap of reality for many parents who believe their love justifies controlling their children's destinies. Each level of hell revealed the depths of human depravity. The tongue-pulling hell targeted those who deceived through words, telephone, scammers, prosecutors who falsified evidence, and lawyers who accepted bribes. Their tongues were ripped out with iron pliers, their screams muffled by the agonizing pain. In the hot wind hell, those who used flowery language to manipulate others, from politicians to false prophets, were subjected to razor-sharp winds that sliced through their bodies. Every word they had uttered returned like boomerangs to tear them apart. Hae-sook and Jung-eun squeezed their eyes shut against the horrific sounds. Finally, they reached the ice hell, reserved for the most heinous and violent criminals. Frail and weakened by age, they were encased in blocks of ice, the chilling cold tearing at their flesh. A fate worse than death. Next came the hell of forbidden love. The next stop was the unholy union hell, where adulterers, those guilty of incest, and those who pursued forbidden love in the mortal realm were sent. A young couple embraced tightly in a cold stone cell, relieved to be together. "At least we have each other," they whispered. But in the next instant, 1,000 blades rained down, piercing their bodies, staining the floor crimson. The price of forbidden love was eternal agony. They moved on to the summoning hell, reserved for those who committed crimes while intoxicated. Hae-sook and Jung-eun were led there and unexpectedly encountered the stray dog who had accompanied Nak-joon. It recognized its former abusive owner, condemned to this hell. Memories of beatings and mistreatment flooded back. It longed to see him suffer, to avenge its miserable life. But as it watched its former owner weeping and clinging to a lifeline, it hesitated, then rushed forward, pulling him away from the fiery pit. A hug filled with remorse, but the dog simply stared, then turned and walked away, severing the painful bond between human and animal. The next stop was the no excuses hell, where those who committed crimes while drunk were forced to walk a tight rope in a state of perpetual inebriation. A fall meant plunging into the boiling lava below. 3 teenagers, who had murdered while drunk, argued amongst themselves, none willing to take responsibility. The hellish attendants, losing patience, revoked their chance at redemption and cast all 3 into the fiery abyss. Then came the hell for internet trolls. After death, the king of hell used their heads as keyboards, each keystroke a bloody blow, returning the pain they had inflicted on others with their words. After they toured hell, the king of hell ordered the 4 to step onto the scales of sin. If their sins weighed 50 or more, they would be officially condemned to hell. As Hae-sook stepped onto the scales, the needle hovered around the 50 mark. Anxiety etched on her face. Suddenly, Nak-joon appeared in hell, screaming Hae-sook's name, defying all the rules. His cries echoed through the desolate realm, interrupting the king of hell's judgment. Enraged by this violation, the king of hell recognized Nak-joon as heavenly resident and threatened to obliterate him. Facing annihilation, Nak-joon tearfully pleaded for Hae-sook's release. The king of hell offered a cruel bargain. "If you dare to endure all the levels of hell, you may see again, a wager of love against life itself." Without hesitation, Nak-joon stared into the king of hell's eyes and leapt into the boiling lava. Beginning his journey through hell, he braced for the consuming fire, the agony of sin, ready to sacrifice himself for his love. But something unexpected happened. There was no fire, no pain. He opened his eyes to find himself lying in a lush green meadow. He was back in heaven. He raced home and burst through the door, overjoyed to find Hae-sook safe and sound, unharmed. He embraced her, laughing and crying at the same time. It turned out that while in the scales, Hae-sook had awakened. The clock had reset to noon, the precise moment that would have sealed her fate in hell. Knowing she would be separated from Nak-joon forever, she wept in despair. But then, a miracle occurred. As a single tear fell, the needle on the scales of sin shifted slightly, finally settling at 49.99 kg, just enough to escape damnation. The king of hell sternly warned her, "Your sins hang by a thread. Live a virtuous life, there will be no second chances." Hae-sook tearfully nodded, promising to live righteously from that day forward. When it was Jung-ae's turn on the scales, something even more unexpected happened. The needle didn't move at all. Everyone, including the king of hell, was perplexed. Hae-sook, assuming Jung-ae had committed too many sins, fell to her knees and pleaded, "Please give her another chance. She never knew love or family, only a life of debt collecting with me. I'll atone for her sins, I'll guide her to a virtuous life." Before she could finish her plea, the scene shifted abruptly. They were back in their heavenly home, while they rejoiced in their survival. Nak-joon suddenly rushed in, embracing Hae-sook and sobbing. He had thrown himself into the fires of hell to save her. Hae-sook was deeply moved. Then, doubts about Jung-ae's identity resurfaced. She asked directly, "Are you Sum-ae?" But Jung-ae was confused, having no idea who Sum-ae was. She explained that she had missed Hae-sook terribly since her death and had arrived in heaven after a car accident. Hae-sook felt betrayed, convinced Jung-ae was a freeloader impersonating Sum-ae. Losing her composure, she grabbed a broom and dragged Jung-ae off to find the real Sum-ae and get to the bottom of things. They went to the heavenly center and found Sum-ae pleading with the administrator to send her to hell in exchange for Hae-sook's safe return. "Please send me to hell. Just let Hae-sook go back safely." Hae-sook interrupted the argument. Seeing her alive, Sum-ae burst into tears, rushing to embrace her, expressing her worry and relief. The three returned home together. Back at the house, Hae-sook confronted Sum-ae. "Who are you? Why do you act exactly like Jung-ae?" But Sum-ae insisted she had no memories and wasn't intentionally imitating anyone. Her actions were purely instinctive. Unable to get any further information, Hae-sook allowed her to stay until her memory returned. While things with Sum-ae seemed to have calmed down, Nak-joon faced new trouble for his unauthorized entry into hell. He was suspended from his heavenly duties and was no longer a mailman. For someone bedridden for so many years, being a mailman and walking freely had been a source of pride and renewed purpose. Now suspended, he felt useless, unable to contribute to his family. Hae-sook reassured him, "I was good at making money when I was alive, and I'll find a way here, too." The next day, Hae-sook went to the heavenly center. First, she asked the clerk to look up information on Jung-ae, but the system had no record of her. Hae-sook figured the information might not have been uploaded from hell yet and decided to address it later. Then, she went to see the heavenly administrator to plead Nak-joon's case. She earnestly explained how much the job meant to him, and asked for leniency. Hae-sook then started brainstorming ways to make money in heaven. She checked her good deed balance, but the system informed her that her account was insufficient. Thinking she hadn't performed any good deeds, she felt a pang of sadness. However, the clerk reminded her that she might have forgotten some small acts of kindness she performed in the human world. These acts had been recorded and stored in a dormant good deed account. The good news, after the newcomer's orientation, all accumulated good deeds would be transferred to her heavenly tablet, ready to be used. Remembering her dormant account, Hae-sook returned home and opened her heavenly tablet. The first item displayed was 2 ears of corn. Hae-sook couldn't recall any good deeds involving corn, but just then, a young man appeared, identifying himself as the son of an elderly scrap collector who had owed Hae-sook money. He shared a touching story. When his father brought the money to repay Hae-sook, she returned a bill, claiming it was extra, and gave him 2 hot ears of corn, telling him to eat one today and save the other for tomorrow. At the time, the elderly man had been deeply despondent and contemplating ending his life. But the 2 ears of corn and Hae-sook's simple gesture of kindness made him feel cared for, giving him a reason to live. From then on, whenever Hae-sook gave something away, she always provided enough for 2 days, believing that tomorrow was always worth living for. The son had come simply to express his gratitude. As he left, the 2 ears of corn disappeared from Hae-sook's tablet, signifying the activation of that good deed. Jung-ae explained that all the items on the tablet represented good deeds Hae-sook had performed, though she couldn't remember them. Hae-sook decided to track down the recipients to jog her memory. This time they sought out the owner of a butterfly hair clip. The girl's name was Jung-sook. Upon seeing her, memories flooded back. Years ago, while collecting debts with Jung-ae, Hae-sook learned of Jung-sook's death. Arriving at the funeral parlor, they discovered it was a pauper's funeral with no mourners and about to be shut down. Unable to bear the thought of her passing alone and unmourned, Hae-sook had paid for a proper funeral. even inviting her debtors to attend in exchange for reduced interest on their loans. A seemingly harsh woman yet capable of profound compassion. Today, young Suk bowed her head in gratitude, repaying the kindness from years ago. Hae-sook accepted her thanks, but worried, what if I owe a debt to someone I don't remember? Jung-eun gently reassured her, if there is such a person, they'll have a tablet too. Maybe one day they'll find you. After parting ways with young Suk, Hae-sook let Jung-eun head home while she went to her usual class at the church. The young priest, now a dear friend, cheerfully awaited her arrival. After class, they decided to go snail hunting in the fields. Hae-sook wanted to cook the priest a hometown delicacy. The sight of them laughing, eating, and basking in the sun brought a sense of peace to viewers. On their way back, Hae-sook's legs grew tired, so the priest offered her a piggyback ride. Their silhouette stretched long under the setting sun. A beautiful and touching scene. Meanwhile, Nak-joon was back on mail duty, delivering messages of love from heaven. He had been officially reinstated as a heavenly postman. His current client was a recently deceased woman who had brought her savings book and a message for her daughter, a bride whose wedding was taking place down on earth. Nak-joon arrived at the wedding just as the ceremony was about to start. The bride, despite having her older brother by her side, was in tears, heartbroken that her mother couldn't be there for her special day. Her brother embraced her, wiping away her tears, and whispered, "From today onwards, you'll have something I can never give you, a family of your own." Just then, Nak-joon approached, delivering a letter from their mother in heaven. Inside was the savings book she had diligently filled over the years. A note attached read, "Whenever I miss you, I whisper each of your names." Longing to hold you tight, overcome with emotion, the siblings sobbed in Nak-joon's arms, who, in their mother's stead, embraced them, thanking them for growing into such wonderful people. After delivering the letter, Nak-joon hurried off to his next delivery, telling Sum-ae, who had accompanied him to Earth to try and recover her memories, to wait for him. But Sum-ae's attention was suddenly captured by an image on a passerby's shirt. A hazy memory surfaced. In her dreams, she had seen a young woman dancing by the seashore, a figure identical to the one on the shirt. Could this be the key to unlocking her lost past? Just then, Sum-ae spotted a man wearing a shirt with a pattern identical to the one in her dreams. A surge of anger, the source of which she couldn't explain, welled up inside her. After the man disappeared, Nak-joon and Sum-ae returned to heaven, promising to come back another time to search for more clues. On their way, they saw a vibrant rainbow arching across the sky, the rainbow bridge where deceased pets crossed over to heaven. The 3 stray dogs, having arrived earlier, now served as greeters welcoming newly departed canine souls. They used the dogs' behavior and fur condition to discern their earthly circumstances. Dogs that spun in circles had likely been confined to small spaces. The motion ingrained from habit. Dogs with sleek, shiny coats had clearly been well cared for. Those with matted fur and heightened anxiety had probably been abandoned or abused. One dog stared blankly at a wall, exhibiting classic signs of separation anxiety. Its owner, having lived alone and frequently been absent, had left the dog with nothing but endless waiting. The dogs were taken to a mental health center where they wrote in good dog journals to regain the self-esteem often crushed by humans. One wrote, "I'm no longer afraid when I see a rock being picked up." Another, "I no longer tremble when someone drinks alcohol near me." Some even learned to forgive those who had abandoned them and the veterinarians who had euthanized them. The 3 stray dogs tried to comfort a newcomer, the dog that stared at the wall, telling him about all the fun things to do in heaven. But the dog simply whispered, "Nothing's fun without my owner." It reminisced about how its owner always left the TV on and its toys scattered around for comfort before leaving for work. But it felt empty as its only joy was being with its owner. After therapy, all the dogs were led to the door of reincarnation. Those with a glowing light on their bodies were eligible for reincarnation. Only Mandu, a small fluffy dog, glowed. The 2 older dogs were overjoyed, helping Mandu choose a good family to be reborn into. Just then, Nak-joon appeared, asking for Mandu's help before its reincarnation. He brought Mandu to the depressed dog's owner. Mistaking Mandu for his returned pet, the owner embraced the dog tightly. Overcome with emotion, Nak-joon gently explained that it was a different dog and encouraged the owner to write a postcard to his deceased companion. The owner poured out his heart, apologizing for leaving his dog alone while he worked, promising to make it up to him if he ever had the chance. Touchingly, the deceased dog sent a reply, saying it never blamed its owner, cherished their happy memories, and only wished for his happiness. A poignant moment of forgiveness and unconditional love. His task complete, Mandu chose its next life, not with a wealthy family as the older dogs advised, but as a companion to a lonely homeless man living in a subway station, a humble choice filled with love and sacrifice. While Nak-joon was busy, Hae-sook felt a growing unease, a sense of impending doom. Meanwhile, Jung-ae, deciding to live life to the fullest and pursue her desires, set her sights on the handsome director of the Heavenly Center, dressed flamboyantly with makeup expertly applied. She launched her campaign, flirting outrageously, asking him point blank if he was married or divorced. The director, terrified, fled without answering, undeterred. Jung-ae doubled down on her efforts, learning that he taught a class. She scared away all the other students, forcing him to tutor her privately. A comical, audacious courtship unfolded in heaven, while Jung-ae pursued love. Hae-sook finally understood the source of her anxiety. Her dreaded mother-in-law had arrived uninvited, even in heaven. Even at 80, the fear of her mother-in-law remained as potent as ever. Her mother-in-law inspected every corner of the house, criticizing endlessly while Hae-sook trailed behind, daring not to utter a word of defiance. When Nak-joon returned, Hae-sook was overjoyed, seeing him in a casual t-shirt. She rushed him to change, fearing her mother-in-law's disapproval of his lack of formality. During dinner, noticing the affectionate glances between Nak-joon and Hae-sook, her mother-in-law accused Hae-sook of mistreating him, slamming her chopsticks down and declaring she had lost her appetite. After dinner, when Nak-joon offered to wash the dishes, she mocked him for acting like a woman. Nak-joon, reaching his limit, gently suggested that in modern times, mothers-in-law should be friends with their daughters-in-law, going shopping and enjoying spa days together. Surprisingly, his words resonated. Her mother-in-law declared she would become a modern mother-in-law, ready to embrace shopping and spa trips, and invited Hae-sook out the following day. Hae-sook, dreading the prospect of spending time with her, made an excuse and escaped to the church to pray. There she found the young priest with a cold. She stayed and cared for him, cooking sweet potatoes together and enjoying a peaceful day. The priest watched her leave, a warmth spreading through his heart. As a child, he had waited every day for his mother to pick him up from church, but he died at the age of 5. His childhood filled with longing. Now, Hae-sook filled the void of the mother he had yearned for. Each visit was a balm to his lost childhood. Meanwhile, Jung-ae returned home before Hae-sook's mother-in-law. Sitting alone in the living room, a melancholic expression on her face, she sighed, saying she had waited all day. Perhaps Hae-sook doesn't want to be around me anymore. She lamented. In a moment of vulnerability, she confided in Jung-ae that she had treated Hae-sook terribly when she was alive, admitting she had modeled her behavior after her mother-in-law, who had treated her the same way. She had believed that a harsh, critical relationship was the norm between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, but now realized she was wrong. She was heartbroken seeing how Hae-sook, even in old age, still carried the burden of household chores, yet became visibly afraid whenever she was around. Jung-ae encouraged her to talk to Hae-sook directly, but she shook her head like drinking something too hot or too cold. Only the person experiencing it truly knows how it feels. She understood that a simple apology couldn't erase years of harsh treatment. She tearfully admitted she had never helped Hae-sook, only criticized and judged, despite Hae-sook's struggles to provide for the family and care for the ailing Nak-joon. Before leaving, she asked Nak-joon to tell Hae-sook that she wouldn't bother them anymore and offered a heartfelt apology. Though touched by his mother's words, Nak-joon was frustrated. He hoped Hae-sook would forgive her, but Hae-sook couldn't overcome the years of psychological trauma and wanted to maintain a clear distance. This angered Nak-joon, who accused her of being petty and began to withdraw. His coldness deeply hurt Hae-sook, making her realize that the true source of her unease wasn't her mother-in-law, but Nak-joon. He was acting like a stranger. The next day, Nak-joon took Sum-ae back to the human world. There she saw the man from her dreams again, the one who ignited an inexplicable rage within her. This time she lost control. Slapping him across the face, he retaliated, shoving her to the ground and spitting on her. Sum-ae sprang up and began choking him furiously. Buried memories surged to the surface. Pain, resentment, and despair from a past life flashed in her eyes. She nearly killed him. Haunted by this outburst, Sum-ae was consumed by guilt. Suspecting she was a criminal, why couldn't she touch objects in the human world? Yet she could strangle that man. Nak-joon reasoned that her intense emotions might have allowed her to momentarily bypass the usual restrictions. On their next trip, Sum-ae saw a baby's toy fall to the ground. She tried to pick it up but couldn't. Nak-joon placed his hand on her shoulder, and this time she was able to pick up the toy and return it to the child. The moment she touched the baby, Sum-ae burst into tears. an overwhelming sadness washing over her as if a deep wound in her heart had been ripped open. This intense emotion triggered a flicker of memory. She thanked Nak-joon for helping her retrieve a piece of her past. However painful, facing the pain was better than never knowing who she was. Nak-joon confessed that he had witnessed countless souls being dragged to hell without intervening. But Sum-ae was the first he had felt compelled to help. He wondered if they shared some past connection. Sum-ae placed her hand on Nak-joon to borrow his strength to touch some nearby plants. Just then, a man in a Hawaiian shirt walked by, triggering a momentary panic. But she quickly realized it wasn't the man from her dreams. What struck her was the feeling of their hands clasped together. A strange emotion stirred within her. As they released their hands, hers seemed to remember the feeling. Instinctively weaving wild flowers into 2 rings, she gave one to Nak-joon as a token of gratitude. Was it simply gratitude, or was something more profound blossoming between them? Meanwhile, still upset with Nak-joon, Hae-sook sought solace at the church while making rice wine with the priest. She drank a bit too much and ended up dozing off, unexpectedly. The priest, who'd never had a drop of alcohol before, decided to sample the brew while she slept, and well, things got out of hand. When Hae-sook woke up, she found the priest stumbling around town completely inebriated. She quickly shepherded him to the afterlife center to sober up. And who does she run into there? Nak-joon, of course. After handing the priest over to the medical staff, Nak-joon had no choice but to take Hae-sook home. He remarked that he'd never seen her drink before when they were alive. Hae-sook let out a bitter laugh and recounted a painful memory. She described how once while collecting rent, a tenant had thrown fish guts and scales all over her. The stench lingered, a constant reminder of the humiliation. Only alcohol, she confessed, could numb the shame. She used to hide a stash next to her kimchi jar, pretending to grab kimchi when she really wanted a swig. The memory of her first drink was tied to the resentment she felt living with her mother-in-law. At every meal, her mother-in-law would push the fish head onto Hae-sook's plate. Even when Nak-joon tried to give her better pieces, his mother would coldly brush them aside. One time, Hae-sook dared to take the best part of the fish, and her mother-in-law unleashed a torrent of verbal abuse. Hearing this, Nak-joon finally understood why Hae-sook couldn't reconcile with his mother. He embraced her, choked with emotion, apologizing for never understanding the pain she had endured. When Hae-sook woke up the next morning, she found Nak-joon, Jung-eun, and Sum-ae clumsily trying to make hangover soup for her, watching them fumble around the messy kitchen. A smile softened her face. She joined them, offering her help and announcing her willingness to make peace with her mother-in-law. Nak-joon revealed that before leaving his mother had promised not to return and disrupt their lives again. This, however, infuriated Hae-sook. She scolded Nak-joon, arguing that if his mother was truly remorseful, they shouldn't let her leave feeling isolated. Hae-sook rushed off with a gift to apologize, only to receive the devastating news that her mother-in-law had decided to reincarnate. Back home, she relayed the news to a saddened Nak-joon. Hae-sook comforted him, suggesting that perhaps his mother would find happiness in her next life. They sat together sharing a drink, heads resting against each other. A moment of quiet comfort. This tender scene, however, was unknowingly witnessed by Sum-ae, who silently slipped away. Lying in bed, Sum-ae recalled her prayers in the church, seeking forgiveness for the pain she had caused. The wounds of the past still lingered, but she was slowly starting to remember who she was. Meanwhile, Hae-sook and Nak-joon went to see Nak-joon's mother off for her reincarnation. Before leaving, Hae-sook bumped into Sum-ae, who seemed to avoid her gaze as if hiding something. Back home, Hae-sook found a small ring woven from wild flowers on the floor. Finding it beautiful, she tucked it into her pocket. Unaware of its deep significance to someone, at the Afterlife Center, an employee explained that each soul could only choose their rebirth within the confines of a predetermined book. Some wanted to be born into wealthy families, others dreamed of being breathtaking beauties, admired by all. But Nak-joon's mother chose the most challenging path filled with hardship. Nak-joon vehemently protested, seeking out a manager to convince his mother to change her mind. To his surprise, the manager admired her bravery. He explained that life was a cycle. Bad deeds in one life led to consequences in the next, while good deeds paved the way for a better future. Reincarnation wasn't an escape from debts, but a chance for purification. His words left Hae-sook and Nak-joon speechless. They couldn't stop his mother from making her own decision. Before her rebirth, the three shared a final meal. For the first time, Nak-joon's mother offered Hae-sook the best piece of fish. She took Hae-sook's hand, apologizing for her past unkindness, and expressing regret for their strange relationship. After the meal, they gathered before the reincarnation screen, which displayed past life connections. The results shocked everyone. Nak-joon and his mother had only been teacher and student in a previous life. However, Hae-sook and his mother had been connected through multiple lifetimes, sometimes as close friends, other times as enemies on the battlefield. Remarkably, in one of those past lives, Hae-sook was the cruel mother-in-law, and Nak-joon's mother was the unfortunate daughter-in-law who suffered a tragic unjust death. The manager of the Reincarnation Center shared a piece of wisdom: if you want to understand your past life, look at the person who causes you suffering in this life. They are a reflection of your past self. This revelation struck Hae-sook deeply. She finally understood that the harsh treatment she received from Nak-joon's mother was karmic retribution for her own past misdeeds. In a touching moment, Nak-joon's mother wiped away Hae-sook's tears, entrusted Hae-sook's care to Nak-joon, and embraced her one last time. On their way home, Hae-sook opened her arms to Nak-joon, telling him that if he needed to cry, he could cry in her embrace. Overcome with emotion, Nak-joon sobbed in Hae-sook's arms, releasing all his grief and longing for his mother. Later, while tidying Nak-joon's room, Hae-sook stumbled upon a wild flower ring in his pocket, identical to the one Sung-ae had dropped earlier. The two rings were clearly a pair. This discovery sparked suspicion in Hae-sook's mind about a possible connection between Nak-joon and Sung-ae. Meanwhile, back in the human world, Nak-joon was approached by a stranger. The man explained that earlier that day, he felt like Sung-ae was choking him, and Nak-joon had somehow intervened and saved him. During their conversation, Nak-joon learned that the man was a former detective, which surprised him. Why would Sung-ae harbor such animosity towards this man? The tension escalated when the man introduced himself as Kong-woo. The name sent a jolt through Nak-joon. He suddenly felt short of breath, his heart pounding as if he had a deep unknown connection to this man. In the distance, Sung-ae stood frozen, her eyes icy as she recognized Kong-woo as the man in the Hawaiian shirt who frequently haunted her dreams. Meanwhile, upon hearing the name Kong-woo, fragmented memories flooded Nak-joon's mind. He grabbed the man by the collar, demanding to know, "Where did you take her?" Kong-woo's shouts drew the attention of passers-by. Sung-ae also recognized him as the man in the Hawaiian shirt from her dreams. She tried to rush forward, but her body felt paralyzed, rooted to the spot. In the chaos, Kong-woo broke free from Nak-joon's grasp and ran into the street, turning back to defiantly shout, "I wasn't the only one." Before he could finish his sentence, a truck barreled towards him, striking him dead on impact. Kong-woo's soul then found itself hovering between worlds. He watched in horror as people walked right through him, the chilling realization of his death washing over him. Nak-joon, still enraged, grabbed Kong-woo's spectral form again, demanding to know where the woman was hidden. Kong-woo, however, turned on Nak-joon, blaming him for his death. He lunged forward, attempting to strangle Nak-joon, seemingly intent on dragging him down to hell. Just then, Sung-ae, consumed by a dark energy, appeared and lifted Kong-woo high above the ground. At the peak of this perilous moment, a grim reaper materialized, absorbing the dark aura surrounding Sung-ae and escorting Kong-woo's soul to the underworld. Before departing, the reaper issued a stern warning to Nak-joon. He had been negligent in his duties in the human world and would face punishment upon his return to the afterlife center. True to the reaper's words, Nak-joon was suspended from his duties. Sung-ae, racked with guilt, apologized profusely, blaming herself for the trouble and Nak-joon's unfair punishment. However, Nak-joon harbored no resentment. Instead, he asked, "Do you remember some kind of grudge against Kong-woo? Why were you so angry?" Sung-ae denied any memory or resentment. She claimed it was a purely instinctive reaction, an overwhelming urge to protect Nak-joon when she saw him in danger. Her words hung in the air, creating a charged atmosphere of unspoken feelings. Back home, despite Hae-sook's concern, Nak-joon feigned exhaustion and retreated to his room. Avoiding her, Hae-sook sensed something amiss when she noticed the wildflower ring on the table. A vague unease settled over her, but she forced herself to dismiss it. The next morning, Hae-sook prepared a lavish breakfast, hoping to ease the strained atmosphere between Nak-joon and Sung-ae. However, the awkward flurry of glances they exchanged only fueled her suspicions. Choosing to ignore them, she took her usual breakfast offering to the church to see the priest, the one person who brought her comfort. Influenced by the priest, Hae-sook began to pray, hoping her wishes would come true. Every day at the church she would meditate and pray for the misunderstanding between her and her husband to be resolved. Opening her eyes one day after prayer, She was surprised to find Nak-joon standing before her, learning that Nak-joon would be staying at home temporarily filled Hae-sook with joy. She even blurted out that this meant he wouldn't be alone with Sam-ae anymore. They walked home hand in hand, drawing teasing remarks from those around them. Meanwhile, Sam-ae observed them with a melancholic and somewhat sullen air, especially when she witnessed their date that evening. Later that night, Jung-ae lamented her unrequited feelings for the Afterlife Center director. Sam-ae's insightful analysis of Jung-ae's emotions made Jung-ae suspect that Sam-ae was also experiencing unrequited love. She quickly realized the only possible target was Nak-joon. She warned Sam-ae to stop any romantic fantasies about Nak-joon, as she despised anyone who hurt Hae-sook. Feeling flustered, Sam-ae retreated to the living room where Nak-joon was also sitting. Upon seeing her, he immediately excused himself and returned to his room, leaving Sam-ae in quiet solitude. However, the real storm was yet to come. None of the four housemates knew that a major upheaval was silently approaching. Jung-ae's father, the man who had deeply hurt her, also arrived in the afterlife. He wandered, searching for his daughter. Upon reaching the Afterlife Center, the director warned him that his true suffering was just beginning, due to the immense karmic debt he had accumulated in the human world. While Jung-ae was waiting for the director, she happily stepped out, but froze in terror upon seeing her father behind him. She screamed and fled home. Hiding in a dark corner, her father, refusing to give up, stood outside her door all night, ringing the bell and calling for her. Hae-sook and Nak-joon angrily told him to leave, but Jung-ae unexpectedly emerged, determined to confront him and end this karmic cycle. She led her father to the director, demanding to know why a man with such a heavy burden of sin was allowed in the afterlife. The director explained that he had already served his punishment in hell. His presence in the afterlife wasn't for enjoyment, but to face the reproach of those he had harmed. That was the true punishment. He was soon to be reincarnated, but only after atoning for his sins and cleansing his karmic debt could he find release. If Jung-ae couldn't forgive him, the painful memories would remain buried in her subconscious, continuing to haunt her through future reincarnations. At that moment, the director revealed a shocking past life connection. In a previous life, Jung-ae had been married to her current father, and together they were Hae-sook's parents. Through a candle lit by the director, Jung-ae began to see images from that past life. A heartbreaking story unfolded. Exhausted by her life entertaining in bars, Jung-ae had fallen in love with a married man and given birth to Hae-sook. Fearing abandonment if she became a boring housewife, she neglected her child, focusing solely on pleasing her husband. One day, seeing little Hae-sook toddle towards her, a surge of maternal love unexpectedly welled up within her. Unfamiliar with the feeling, she quickly put her daughter down, pretending nothing had happened. However, the tender feeling of holding her child that day remained etched in her heart. On a subsequent trip, she even bought a pair of beautiful shoes for Hae-sook, imagining a day when she could hold her daughter's hand and stroll through their village. Tragically, on her way back to the city, her train derailed, robbing her of the chance to reunite with a child she had neglected but secretly loved. Jung-ae wept with guilt and regret as she saw Hae-sook waiting for her at the doorway of their past home. They rushed towards each other, embracing tightly as if to make up for all the lost years. That night, mother and daughter slept side by side. But this time, Hae-sook was the child cradled in her mother's arms, instead of the one providing comfort to Jung-ae. Jung-ae tearfully recalled the long nights in the human world, yearning for Hae-sook's warm embrace while failing to fulfill her own maternal duties. The one who provided solace was the very child she had abandoned. The next morning, they strolled together through a serene meadow. In the gentle atmosphere, Hae-sook apologized to her mother for making her collect debts and for all the wrong she had done in their past life. She confessed that while she usually disliked physical touch, she felt incredibly comforted in Jung-ae's embrace. It turned out that affection was deeply rooted in their past life connection. Jung-ae tearfully admitted that her love for Hae-sook, though genuine, had been misguided, leading to many mistakes. She lamented her failures as a mother. In a touching moment, Hae-sook held Jung-ae's hand, urging her to return to the human world, live a happy life, love the person she desired, have a lovely child, and enjoy a peaceful old age. Then, she promised, "We'll meet again." Bathed in Hae-sook's loving gaze, Jung-ae smiled and faded away, her soul finally at peace, back in the human world. Jung-ae, who had been in a coma for 3 months due to the accident, suddenly began to shed tears. Her vital signs improved. She was slowly waking up. In the afterlife, the director consoled Hae-sook. He revealed that he had already told her that Jung-ae was her mother in a past life. Despite having forgiven Jung-ae, Hae-sook couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the irony of being abandoned and now connected to this woman in such a complex way. The director explained that this was the law of karma. Jung-eun had abandoned Hae-sook in a past life, but in this life, Hae-sook had embraced and cared for her. This was partly due to Jung-eun's hardship, but it also allowed Hae-sook to share some of the happiest moments of her afterlife with Jung-eun. Hae-sook emotionally shared that Jung-eun had been a friend, a sister, and a mother to her when we strolled through town. She was like a friend. When someone scolded me, she protected me like a big sister. When I was sick, she cared for me like a gentle mother. What I received from her was far greater than what I lost. And so she vowed to always wish Jung-eun happiness regardless of her life elsewhere. The priest who had taught Hae-sook how to pray stood in the church quietly praying. He recalled his childhood sitting in the church crying and waiting for his mother to find him. He still held on to that same wish. Suddenly, he heard the church door open. Hae-sook walked in. The priest burst into tears, instinctively calling her mother. Meanwhile, Sum-ae, burdened by undisclosed past life memories, woke up in tears, calling out the name Yunho, the name of her child from a previous life. She decided to tell Nak-joon everything. To her surprise, the name stunned Nak-joon. He grabbed her shoulders agitatedly. Asking how she knew that child, Sum-ae was bewildered. Admitting she only knew the child from her dreams, Nak-joon finally confessed that the boy was connected to him and begged her to tell him immediately if she remembered anything else. At the same time, in the church, the priest continued to pray. Since arriving in the afterlife, he had longed to see his mother again, and after all those prayers, the first person to enter the church was Hae-sook. The priest was convinced she was his mother. Hae-sook gently explained that she and Nak-joon had no children, but if he wished, she would gladly be a mother figure to him in this life. The priest was moved to tears but quickly masked his vulnerability, dismissing it as a joke, unwilling to reveal his deep-seated wounds. Back home, Hae-sook recounted the incident at the church to Nak-joon, unaware that someone was eavesdropping from behind. Then a single sentence pierced her heart: "We never had children." Sum-ae was shocked. If they weren't Yunho's parents, then whose child was he? That night, she dreamed again. This time, she saw the boy run into the arms of a woman. It was her. The brief mother and son embrace vanished. Jolting her awake in a panic, she saw Yunho's name and rushed to the living room to tell Nak-joon that she believed Yunho was her son. But then a flood of memories surged through her mind. She saw Nak-joon holding Yunho, his expression cold and calculating. She suspected Nak-joon had kidnapped her child. Despite her fear and anger, she concealed the recovered memories, simply saying she had been mistaken. She then fled to her room where the returning memories also revealed Nak-joon forcing her head underwater as she struggled desperately. Now in Sum-ae's eyes, Nak-joon was nothing short of a demon. Terrified, she grabbed a nearby object, threw it at him, and ran from the house. Meanwhile, Hae-sook was blissfully unaware of the unfolding drama. She and the priest attended the Afterlife Lottery Festival. The organizer explained the rules. There were 6 boxes, and players had to search throughout the afterlife to find the keys to open them. Whoever opened a box would advance to the storytelling finals. The winner would then enter the dream of a living loved one to reveal the winning lottery numbers. Hae-sook, with her boundless love for Jung-eun, was determined to find the key and win this special opportunity. She and the priest scoured the afterlife, but her impatience led to repeated failures. The priest advised her that perhaps she needed to let go of her desire to find what was truly valuable. Hae-sook listened and returned to the church to pray, but she quickly fell asleep. Meanwhile, the priest persistently prayed on her behalf. Miraculously, a key fell from the sky, landing right on the priest's head. Just then, Hae-sook woke up, spotted the key, and erupted in joy. Her wish on the verge of coming true. While Hae-sook was preoccupied with the lottery, the conflict between Nak-joon and Sum-ae intensified. She suspected that Nak-joon had known her true identity all along and had only pretended to help her to extract information. When confronted, Nak-joon coldly warned her, "I don't care who you are, just don't say anything reckless in front of Hae-sook." His words were like a dagger to her heart. She had cherished their time together, but it had been one-sided. Nak-joon's only concern was Hae-sook. Heartbroken, she sat alone on a bench, watching a couple stroll by hand in hand, triggering memories of her own sweet moments with Nak-joon. Running together in the rain, sharing a passionate kiss, these memories resurfaced as her memory gradually returned. Back home, Hae-sook excitedly showed Nak-joon her invitation to the finals. She declared her intention to win and bring the winning numbers back for Jung-ae. Nak-joon remained silent, his face burdened with an unspoken secret. Just then, Sum-ae returned home covered in mud. Hae-sook worriedly asked what had happened and quickly prepared a meal for her. Taking advantage of a private moment, she dropped hints about a secret she shared with Nak-joon. Hoping to provoke him, he simply turned away in silence, leaving her with her unspoken sorrow. The next day, Hae-sook entered the storytelling finals. Although Nak-joon wanted to accompany her, she declined, fearing it would make her more nervous. She simply asked him to stay home and cheer her on through the television. The 6 finalists took turns sharing their stories. Whoever moved the 100 judges and received a perfect score would win. The first contestants delivered tragic tales attempting to garner sympathy, but Hae-sook, with her discerning eye, exposed the lies in the first 4 stories. The 5th contestant, however, didn't care about winning or losing. She explained that she wasn't there to compete, but to send a message to her deceased husband, with whom she had committed suicide due to his illness. She movingly described how her husband, suffering from a terminal illness, couldn't bear the thought of her living alone with dementia. So they chose to depart together. She expressed her gratitude for his unwavering love and care throughout the years. Her heartfelt story brought tears to the eyes of the audience and judges. Even Hae-sook was deeply touched. The woman earned 99 points, the highest score so far. Knowing she needed a perfect score to win, Hae-sook took the stage. She recounted her difficult life journey through pictures and drawings. However, her story failed to resonate as she had hoped. Some judges yawned, some even retracted their votes. The countdown clock ticked away and her score remained disappointingly low. In a bold move, she abandoned her own story and called out to the priest in the audience, urging him to tell his story. Without hesitation, the priest stepped forward and recounted his 5-year-old self, waiting every day in front of the church, hoping to see his mother again. The story moved the entire audience to tears. However, the host unexpectedly asked, "So, how does this relate to Hae-sook?" That's when Hae-sook made her move. She fiercely criticized the mother who abandoned the priest all those years ago, leaving a small child alone in the cold, waiting in vain. And that irresponsible mother, she revealed, was her. The auditorium erupted in shock and emotion. In a climactic moment, Hae-sook opened her arms and embraced the priest, who tearfully cried out, "Mother." The poignant scene touched everyone's hearts. Hae-sook received a perfect score of 100, becoming the ultimate winner. Backstage, however, controversy brewed. Some staff suspected collusion, arguing that Hae-sook's win should be revoked and awarded to the 5th contestant, but the organizer insisted that everything they had said was true. Emerging from the auditorium, Hae-sook's legs trembled. Still in disbelief at her performance, the priest, however, was upset, scolding her, "If you're going to lie, at least don't be so blatant about it." Overcome with guilt, they decided to go to the church to pray for forgiveness. Hand in hand, they walked beneath the shimmering sunset, unaware of the hidden connection that still existed between them. At home, a crucial memory struck Sum-ae. She recalled asking Yunho about a family portrait of 3 people. Yunho had identified each person. On the right is Nak-joon, in the middle is me, and on the left is mother. Sum-ae pieced together the clues. She and Nak-joon had once had a forbidden affair, and the child was the result of their love. The harsh truth began to dawn on her. Nak-joon had grown to resent both her and their child, wanting nothing more than to return to his normal life and erase the past, in a painful memory. Some pleaded with Nak-joon, only to be cruelly pushed underwater as if he were trying to eliminate a living witness to his shameful past. Faced with Nak-joon's cold silence in the present, Sum-ae broke down in tears. Through her tears, more memories flooded back. She remembered asking the child in the picture about the woman on the left. Yunho had replied, "That's my mother, Hae-sook." The words were like a final blow to Sum-ae's heart. At the same time, at home, Nak-joon finally confessed to Hae-sook that Yunho was their son. Hae-sook and the priest's televised performance about their deep mother-son bond moved millions of viewers. Overnight, they became the afterlife's biggest celebrities, constantly approached by people wanting to hear their story. Hae-sook was plagued by guilt for deceiving the public and for involving the priest in her lie. The priest, however, bore no resentment. Thanks to Hae-sook, he had experienced the mother-son connection he had always longed for. The resentment he held towards his real mother began to dissipate. He decided to reincarnate and start a new life. Hae-sook felt a pang of sadness at his departure. Wanting him to thrive in his new life, she began teaching him the rules of survival in the human world. How to be a lovable child, how to pursue a girl he liked, and how to find a lifelong partner. The day before his reincarnation, their attachment reached its peak. wanting to stay with Hae-sook a little longer. The priest insisted on walking her home. As they parted, he quickly turned and walked away, but after a few steps, he stopped, overwhelmed by emotion, and burst into tears, leaving Hae-sook felt like becoming homeless again. The pain of separation was unbearable. When Hae-sook arrived home, her face still tear-streaked, she mentioned that she and Nak-joon had no children. Nak-joon immediately burst into tears, sadly asking if she truly remembered nothing. Hae-sook asked what she had forgotten. Nak-joon pulled her into a hug, lying that he was afraid she had forgotten their happy memories together. Sung-ae witnessed their warm embrace, and jealousy and anger surged within her. She felt the torment of unrequited love, a pain so intense she'd rather be in hell. Nak-joon had previously told her that Yunho was his and Hae-sook's son, but he hadn't elaborated. Sung-ae still believed their relationship had been an affair, but she couldn't understand why Hae-sook, as Yunho's mother, had no memory of him. So during a meal, she casually asked Hae-sook if she had ever heard the name Yunho. To her surprise, Hae-sook had no recollection. Nak-joon, seeing this, became furious and pulled Sung-ae aside, forbidding her from saying anything reckless in front of Hae-sook. After Hae-sook left for church, Sung-ae embraced Nak-joon from behind, asking if he loved her and confessing that she had contemplated killing Hae-sook. The love triangle felt suffocating and she refused to be the one cast aside. Seeing Sung-ae kneeling on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, Nak-joon also began to cry, and held her close. Tormented by inner conflict, Nak-joon was at a loss for how to push Sung-ae away. His embrace, however, convinced Sung-ae of his love. Joyfully she pulled him along for a walk, asking him to carry her on his back, just as he had carried Hae-sook. He complied, carrying her through the trees. The sweet moments they shared filled Sung-ae with contentment. She no longer cared about discovering her true identity or whether Nak-joon truly loved her. She simply wanted to stay with him forever. Just like this, at that moment Sonia, who had been absent for a long time, suddenly reappeared. She declared that Sung-ae couldn't stay in the afterlife, nor could she go to hell, because Sung-ae wasn't human and would eventually disappear. Sung-ae pressed Nak-joon, demanding to know if Sonia was telling the truth. Seeing the truth about to be exposed, Nak-joon revealed what the afterlife center, the director, had told him. Sung-ae, it turned out, was the embodiment of Hae-sook's buried grief. These rejected and forgotten memories buried deep within Hae-sook had become so potent that they formed a separate personified entity. Initially, Nak-joon wanted Sung-ae, the embodiment of resentment, to disappear, so Hae-sook wouldn't suffer anymore. But the priest had told him that these emotions had separated from Hae-sook precisely because they hadn't been acknowledged and loved. Only when Hae-sook reconciled with these emotions could Sung-ae vanish. Finally, Sung-ae understood. She wasn't human, but a fragment of Hae-sook's pain. Just then, she saw Yunho appear before her. She remembered weaving a wildflower ring for him and holding him tight, but in the next instant he vanished without a trace. She cried out his name, searching desperately, but he was nowhere to be found. At the same time, Hae-sook arrived at the afterlife center to see the priest off for his reincarnation. Tears streamed down her face even before the final goodbye. The staff frantically searched for the priest everywhere. Learning of his disappearance, Hae-sook panicked and joined the search. Amidst the bustling crowd, a painful forgotten memory resurfaced. Years ago, Hae-sook had taken 5-year-old Yunho for a walk. Yunho, being stubborn, had demanded a toy and refused to leave the toy stall. Hae-sook walked a few steps ahead, expecting him to follow. But in the blink of an eye, he had vanished. Hae-sook and Nak-joon immediately reported him missing to the police. Officer Kong was assigned to the case. When Kong brushed them off, saying there were too many missing children to search for each one, Nak-joon offered him a bribe. To his surprise, Kong scoffed at the small amount, angrily refusing the bribe. Nak-joon was forced to offer a larger sum, which Kong accepted with satisfaction. However, a long time passed without any leads. Enraged, Hae-sook confronted Kong, grabbing him by the throat and demanding answers. Nak-joon intervened just in time, pulling Hae-sook back and helping her regain her composure. Devastated by Yunho's disappearance, Hae-sook descended into madness. She refused to eat or drink, spending her days weeping and clutching a doll as if it were Yunho, never letting it go. To help her regain her sanity, Nak-joon heartbreakingly burned the doll. He even hoped she would forget Yunho entirely and find the strength to move on. After comforting Hae-sook, Nak-joon went to the police station to inquire about the case, only to learn that Kong had resigned. A kind officer told him that Kong had suddenly become wealthy overnight, buying a new car and taking his family on an overseas trip. It turned out Kong had been colluding with an orphanage, registering children as orphans and secretly selling them to America. Furious, Nak-joon confronted Kong. Upon seeing him, Kong panicked and fled in his car. Nak-joon clung to the vehicle, demanding answers, but Kong threw him off. Before he could get up, a truck sped toward him, crushing his legs. Upon regaining consciousness, Nak-joon wanted to tell Hae-sook that their son had likely been kidnapped and sold. But Hae-sook, consumed by grief, had completely forgotten she ever had a son. To spare her further pain, Nak-joon kept the secret. Hae-sook and Sum-ae simultaneously remembered this traumatic event. Sum-ae transformed into a vengeful spirit, angrily choking Hae-sook. Furious that she had forgotten Yunho, Nak-joon rushed forward, pulling Sum-ae away, claiming responsibility for concealing the truth. He then embraced the darkening Sum-ae, wanting to disappear with her. Hae-sook, regaining her senses, didn't want Nak-joon to suffer for her. She begged him not to perish with Sum-ae. At that moment, a vision of a kind, gentle mother awakened the three of them from their grief. They saw young Yunho walking toward them. As he approached, the young Yunho transformed into the adult priest. The director's words proved true. The priest was Hae-sook's son. He couldn't accept that the mother he had longed for his entire life had forgotten his existence. They had met as strangers and then unknowingly lived together as mother and son. The director encouraged him to reflect on his time with Hae-sook. The priest recalled his nightly prayers to see his mother again and realized that perhaps God had heard his pleas, granting him the experience of a mother's warmth before revealing their true connection. He let go of his resentment, appearing before his mother in her memory, comforting her and assuring her she needn't feel guilty. He had been the stubborn one. After getting lost, he had followed her instructions and waited in front of the church, but he was taken by the cruel gang to the orphanage and locked in a windowless storage room where he, a small child, succumbed to the cold. Hearing this, Sum-ae screamed in anguish. Yunho approached her, comforting her, saying he still remembered the cold and the feeling of his mother's embrace. He hoped Sum-ae could let go of her attachment so he could be reborn. With Yunho's gentle persuasion, Sum-ae dissipated like smoke. Yunho stepped forward, reuniting with Hae-sook and Nak-joon. He urged Hae-sook not to grieve for him. Their time together in the afterlife had become a cherished memory. Their connection in this life had ended, but they would surely meet again in another form, recognizing each other because they were family in his parents' arms. Yunho faded away as he passed through the door of reincarnation. He recalled their happy childhood together, and carrying his love for them, stepped into his new life. After Yunho's reincarnation, Nak-joon resumed his duties as a grim reaper, erasing the past life memories of those about to be reborn. Witnessing an old man reincarnating as a baby girl and having to part with his grown daughter, Nak-joon was moved as he erased the baby's memories. He felt a twinge of cruelty in his actions, but Hae-sook comforted him, saying that forgetting the past was necessary for a new beginning. He wasn't doing anything wrong. The next day, the lottery program reached its conclusion. According to the rules, Hae-sook had to enter Jung-ae's dream to reveal the winning numbers. Back in their old house, Hae-sook gazed happily at everything around her. The director reminded her to quickly tell Jung-ae the numbers and complete her task, as she had to return to the afterlife before Jung-ae woke up. Hae-sook woke the sleeping Jung-ae. Seeing Hae-sook before her, Jung-ae embraced her tightly, overjoyed, and they chatted happily. Seeing the director urging her, Hae-sook recited the winning numbers to Jung-ae, telling her to remember them carefully. However, Jung-ae's memory failed her. She kept mixing up the numbers. Even after Hae-sook repeated them several times, she couldn't remember them correctly. Prompted by Nak-joon, Hae-sook cleverly turned the numbers into a catchy rhyme and taught it to Jung-ae. This worked perfectly. Jung-ae memorized the rhyme and Hae-sook hugged her goodbye. Jung-ae woke up recalling her dream and the rhyme. She mumbled the numbers and went to buy a lottery ticket. At the store, she ran into the delivery man she owed money to. Chasing after him, she accidentally left behind her completed lottery ticket. Returning to the store, Jung-ae was stunned to hear the winning numbers announced. They perfectly matched the numbers on her ticket, but in her pursuit of the delivery man, she had missed her chance at the jackpot. Frustrated, she took her anger out on the delivery man. An elderly woman passing by mistook them for a couple, commenting on how well suited they looked together. Jung-ae quickly clarified that they weren't in a relationship. However, as she stood up, her bag strap tangled with the delivery man's, pulling them into an awkward embrace. The delivery man, smitten with Jung-ae, started working extra shifts and used his savings to buy her a pair of shoes as a gift. Jung-ae feigned displeasure, reluctantly accepting the gift, but immediately put on the new shoes after he left. Meanwhile, Having fulfilled her wish of bringing Jung-eun good fortune, Hae-sook could finally relax and enjoy her time with Nak-joon. They discussed reincarnation. Nak-joon didn't want Hae-sook to remain in the afterlife forever in the form of an 80-year-old woman. He promised to find her after they were reborn, vowing to marry no one but her in this life or the next. Reassured, Hae-sook agreed to reincarnate. A peaceful, happy atmosphere settled over the afterlife. The director, wanting to experience some fun in the human world, asked his brother, the King of Hell, to temporarily manage the afterlife. Finding the afterlife dull, the King of Hell summoned thunder and lightning to scare the residents and even playfully sent a bolt of lightning down to the human world, targeting the director. Annoyed by his brother's antics, the director used his powers to freeze him in place. Nak-joon and the director met in the human world, sharing drinks in conversation. Nak-joon confessed that he owed Hae-sook so much and didn't know how to repay her. The director said they were both eligible for reincarnation and could meet again in the human world. Nak-joon was puzzled, couldn't understand. The director smiled, placed a tablet before him, and told him to see for himself. Nak-joon's expression turned serious as he read the information on the screen. He learned that he and Hae-sook were destined to be reborn as husband and wife. A film crew producing a documentary about reincarnation approached Nak-joon and Hae-sook, hoping to interview and film them for the program. Nak-joon hesitated, saying they hadn't decided whether to reincarnate yet. Hae-sook, oblivious to his reservations, enthusiastically agreed. Having resolved the issues that had tormented her in life, she longed to return to the human world and start anew with Nak-joon, documenting their afterlife journey through the program. They participated in the interview, recounting their experiences in the afterlife. They strolled hand in hand on the beach, capturing sweet embraces on camera when filming wrapped. The day of their reincarnation finally arrived, dressed in her finest clothes. Hae-sook walked hand in hand with Nak-joon to the afterlife center and onto the path of reincarnation. They walked through a forest, stopping to rest by a stream. A tree gradually materialized on the water's surface. Crossing it meant reincarnation. Nak-joon carried Hae-sook across the stream one last time, taking this opportunity to reveal a truth she had never known. This was the 23-year time they had been married in their various past lives. Hae-sook looked forward to continuing their relationship as husband and wife, but Nak-joon's expression was heavy. In every past life, Hae-sook had suffered alongside him. He no longer wanted to bring her hardship. He wanted her to leave him and live a completely different life, a life without him. Hae-sook looked at the door of reincarnation just ahead. She didn't deny that being with Nak-joon had brought suffering. But despite the physical hardships, she had also experienced his love and felt deeply fulfilled. She couldn't bear to leave him. In the blink of an eye, Nak-joon vanished, leaving Hae-sook weeping by the stream. Moments later, Hae-sook composed herself and walked towards the door of reincarnation. While Nak-joon returned to the afterlife, watching Hae-sook's interview, she reiterated her desire to be Nak-joon's wife again. After reincarnation, she wanted no other man, even when Nak-joon was bedridden. She never wavered in her devotion. She finally recalled returning from her debt, collecting rounds, and seeing Nak-joon's smile greeting her. It was the most beautiful sight in the world. Because of Nak-joon's love, Hae-sook had faced death without fear, certain that he would be there to meet her. The thought made death itself seem less daunting. Nak-joon too gradually accepted Hae-sook's departure. Sonya often kept him company, but he couldn't deny that without Hae-sook, the afterlife held little meaning. As long as they were together, even amidst hardship, their days were filled with happiness. Every moment with Hae-sook was more precious than paradise itself. Decades passed. In her new life, Hae-sook once again faced death. Lying in a hospital bed, she opened her eyes and saw Nak-joon there to greet her. No matter her age or condition, in Nak-joon's eyes, she was always the most beautiful. This time, they reincarnated together amidst a sea of people. They instantly recognized each other and rushed into each other's arms. And that's the end of our story. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Goodbye and see you next time.